So, President Biden has a goal, right? He wants 70% of all adults to be at least partially vaccinated by the 4th of July. Okay, now, with about 1 month to go, 63% of adults have already received at least one dose. 12 states have already met Biden's goal, and COVID cases are down 90% across the country. So all of that, really good news. And in his speech today at the White House, the president talked about what all of that progress actually means.
Fully vaccinated people are safely shredding their masks and greeting one another with a smile. Grandparents are hugging their grandkids again. Small business owners are reopening storefronts and restaurants because of the vaccination strategy. America is headed into a summer dramatically different from last year's summer. A summer of freedom, a summer of joy, a summer of get-togethers and celebrations. An all-American summer that this country deserves after a long, long, dark winter that we've all endured. But what happens after the summer?
Let's really think about that question for a moment. What happens after the summer? For one, we'll be heading back indoors, which means unvaccinated people will once again be at high risk of becoming infected with COVID-19 or a more dangerous variant of COVID, which brings us to the president's next challenge: convincing the people who either don't want to get the vaccine or can't seem to find the time to get vaccinated. And for that group, the president is pulling out all of the stops.
Starting next week, many vaccination sites will be offering extended hours during the month of June, including pharmacies that will be open 24 hours every Friday night. Starting today, KinderCare, Learning Care Group, the Bright Horizons, alongside with hundreds of YMCA locations, we're going to offer free drop-in childcare while the parents are getting vaccinated. In addition, Uber and Lyft are both offering free rides to and from vaccination sites, vaccination centers. It's easier than ever to get vaccinated.
The administration's strategy seems to be eliminating any excuse at all Americans have for not getting one of the free, highly effective vaccines. The president is also working with private businesses to ramp up incentives. Anheuser-Busch will give a free beer to vaccinated adults once the country reaches the president's 70% goal. I drink wine, so someone please do that. Major League Baseball is also offering on-site vaccinations and giving free tickets to people who get vaccinated. And Kroger launched a program to give $1 million to a vaccinated person every week in June, and free groceries for a year to others. What we're seeing is a month-long, full-fledged, coordinated campaign to boost vaccinations. The question now is, will it work? And joining me now is the U.S. Surgeon General, Dr. Vivek Murthy. Thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Well, it's good to be with you, Zerlina.
So President Biden wants to see 70% of adults vaccinated with at least one dose by July 4th. Do you think we're on track to hit that goal?
Well, Zerlina, I think that we are certainly going to do everything possible to make that goal. And I think if we execute in the way the president laid out today, I think we absolutely can get there. You have to keep in mind that what we're doing, and what we've been doing really over the last several months is really an all-in approach here. That means that we want to really work on three fronts. Number one, address questions that people have about the vaccine to make sure that we can boost people's confidence in a way that's informed by science. Second, we want to make sure that we are conveying to people how important it is for them to get vaccinated, recognizing some people may look at declining case numbers and think, maybe it's not so important to get vaccinated anymore, but absolutely it is. And the third thing that we're working on is to continue to expand access to the vaccines. And this means knocking down barrier after barrier to make it easier to get vaccinated. Today, you're hearing about childcare options now being available, free childcare for people who have kids and for whom that's been a barrier to getting vaccinated. You also heard a few weeks ago about free rides that we are now offering in collaboration with Uber and with Lyft. There are incentives that companies are offering as well, and there are extended hours at pharmacies. one by one, we've been working hard to remove these access barriers. But finally, I'll just say this, Zerlina, what I'm particularly excited about for this month of action is the grassroots engagement that we're seeing now just blossom all around the country. We will have thousands of events in the month of June where people in their communities will be knocking on doors, phone banking, text banking, looking and calling upon their neighbors to get vaccinated and checking on them to see if they need anything, information or help making an appointment. That's how we get this done. This is an all-in moment for our country. It's what we need to do to really step up and protect the rest of the nation from COVID-19.
Related to that all-in approach of the Biden administration, I want to focus in on one new initiative that the president announced today. Let's take a listen, and I'll talk to you on the other side.
Shots at the shop. Barbershops, beauty shops are hubs of activity and information in Black and brown communities in particular, but in many communities across the nation. Local barbers, stylists, they become key advocates for vaccinations in their communities, offering information to customers, booking appointments for them, even using their own businesses as vaccination sites. We're going to work with shops across the country.
Break down why this form of mobilization, working with barbers and hairstylists, is so critical to the approach the administration is trying to implement right now. How did the administration come up with this idea, and will it be effective in your view?
Well, Zerlina, what this goes to is a central tenet of the larger vaccination strategy, which is to engage and to work with trusted messengers. This vaccination campaign will move at the speed of trust. And when people are looking to decide whether or not to get vaccinated, they want to hear from people they trust. Those could be their doctors, or the nurses who care for them. It could be the people that they know and see in their community, including in barbershops and beauty salons. It could be the teachers that guide their children in their communities. And that's why we're engaging all of these communities and many other groups actually in this broader effort. With the barbershops and beauty shops in particular, they are going to be working hand in hand with us and with each other to provide information to their customers about the vaccine, but also in some cases to partner with pharmacies and offer vaccines on site. There should be ideally a no wrong door approach to getting vaccinated in our country. You should be able to get information easily. You should be able to get the vaccine easily. You should be able to hear from people you trust. And what this all underscores also, Zerlina, is that all of us have a really important role we play in getting people vaccinated. You don't just have to have a medical degree or a nursing degree to play a role in helping people get vaccinated. But what we need to do is ourselves get vaccinated, but then turn around, look to our family, our friends, and ask them if they are vaccinated. And if they're not, see if they have questions, help answer them, share your personal experience with them, and help them make an appointment by going to vaccines.gov or texting their zip code to get vax, or to the numeric equivalent of vacuna if they want the information in Spanish. It's going to take all of us doing our part. And if we do, I have confidence we can vaccinate the vast majority of our country and we can protect people from COVID. But we're not out of the woods yet. And that's why we can't let up our guard. We can't just look at the reducing numbers of infections and think, oh, this is over. COVID's fooled us many times before. So we've got to get the job done. That means getting as many people vaccinated as possible.
My dad's a biology professor. I probably ask him once a week, is the pandemic over? And he's like, no. I'll let you know. I'll let you know when it's over. But not yet. And, to that point, we're making a lot of progress here in the United States with vaccination rates being what they are now, which are bringing down case numbers across the country. But in the world, Asia and South America are really still struggling. How much is America's fate tied to what's going on in the rest of the world? And is the administration planning to pivot, or are they already sort of trying to address that part of the issue as we try to reach our herd immunity goal as well?
It's such an important question, Zerlina. And by the way, I want to say your dad's a smart man. And I think he's the right person to ask questions to. He's right. This is definitely not over yet. We'll know that we're in a better place when cases come down, when they stay down, and when we have a large portion of this country vaccinated. That's when we'll know we're in good shape. But the rest of the world really matters because global pandemics are truly global. And they're global because we know that the virus can move across borders. And we've seen that already as we've identified variants in one country and then seen them rapidly spread to others. The B.1.1.7 variant in our country, which is now the dominant variant, was first found in the United Kingdom, but now has rapidly spread and taken over here in the United States. So until the entire world experiences a reduction in COVID cases, we will continue to see new variants develop, and we should expect those variants may end up on our shores. And that's why we have not just a responsibility, but I think a profound obligation to work with other countries and help vaccinate the rest of the world. What you've already seen the president announce is a series of steps over the last few months to move in that direction. Initially with waiving what was called a TRIPS waiver, waiving the intellectual property protections for vaccines so they can be more easily developed abroad. You've seen increasing allotments of vaccine that the president has committed the United States to delivering to other countries, now up to 80 million doses, in fact. And what you are also going to see more of in the months and the weeks ahead is even more efforts to work with other countries to improve manufacturing capacity, to improve tech transfer so that you don't just have the recipe, but you have the knowledge of how to implement that recipe. And also, you're going to see more efforts to strengthen the supply chain of raw ingredients so that we can rapidly produce more vaccine, get it to people around the world, and help protect the world from what has been a really terrible pandemic.
So many Americans have suffered personal losses this year because of COVID-19. We know the numbers of loss, but it's different when it's in your own family. And I know you've lost several family members to COVID. How has the personal experience affected your approach to tackling this disease and pandemic?
Well, Zerlene, it's a good question. And I think, I'm not unique in the sense that there are many people who have lost loved ones to this virus. I have, at this point, lost more than 10 relatives. When I first shared publicly that I had lost family members a few months ago, that number was at 7. But we've now lost, unfortunately, more relatives in India, where the pandemic has really surged to extraordinary levels. So, look, there are many people like me who are seeing the toll of this virus, not just in numbers, but in relationships, and people who we knew and held and enjoyed time with, and now who are no longer here because we didn't have a vaccine, at that point, or couldn't get a vaccine to them. And that's why, Zerlina, I think this moment really deserves perspective. A year ago today, we were in a very difficult place where we had thousands of new cases, we had rising death counts, we had no prospect for when this was going to end. And now, a year later, we have not one but several vaccines. We have seen a dramatic reduction, a 90% reduction in cases since January. We've undoubtedly saved tens of thousands of lives, and we are starting bit by bit to get back to our way of life. A majority of our schools, we're able to get kids back in person. We see more and more businesses getting up and running. We see more people able to go out and see loved ones and hug their grandparents. This is what returning back to normal looks like. But we must never forget the nearly 600,000 people who lost their lives during this past year. And the way I believe that we honor them is to not only never forget, but to use the lessons of this pandemic to protect ourselves from further loss. And that means getting vaccinated. It means being cautious about misinformation that unfortunately is quite pervasive and has led people down the wrong path. And finally, we just have to remember, Zerlina, that there are a whole series of conversations we need to have going forward about what kind of society we want to build post-pandemic, because there are lessons that we've learned during this pandemic. Perhaps most importantly, the importance that our relationships with one another play in our lives, in our happiness, in our well-being, and our ability to overcome difficult moments like this pandemic. My hope is that we will have a larger conversation about how to build a people-centered life and a people-centered society, a society that truly does prioritize relationships, that doesn't make parents feel ashamed for having their kids on a video conference call, or for balancing or doing the difficult balancing act that parents often have to do with homeschooling kids and managing telework. We have the chance to do better than we even were pre-pandemic. And that if we take that silver lining away, from COVID, that will be one way that we can honor the hundreds of thousands of our loved ones who gave their lives during this pandemic.
Here at Team Zerlina, we are pro-kid Cameo. We are pro-pet Cameo. My dog is barking in the background at least once a week. I don't have any children in the house, but if I did, they'd probably be making cameos as well. Last question in the last minute here. I want to ask about breakthrough infections. It's one of those conversations that's popped up now that a lot of us are vaccinated, but people are still testing positive. And I think a lot of folks have questions about whether or not the CDC is going to track those infections and cases just to make sure we have a handle on how much we should be concerned about breakthrough infections and how severe they could possibly be.
Well, Zerlina, it's important because we know that vaccines are not 100% effective. They're really, really effective, in the order of 90% or greater when you're talking about the Moderna and Pfizer vaccine, and not too far from that when you're talking about the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. But we have to realize because they're not perfect, there will be some breakthrough infections, and there already have been. So what the CDC is doing, though, is they're recognizing one important factor here, which is that the breakthrough infections, the vast majority of them will likely be asymptomatic or really mild infections. They've also found that, particularly in the asymptomatic cases, that the viral load, if you will, which has bearing on how likely you are to transmit the virus to someone else, so that viral load tends to be actually quite low. So that's good for two reasons. One, because it means that you don't get as sick. And second, it means that you're much less likely to pass it on to someone else. So the CDC is going to continue to track breakthrough infections that where people have more severe infection that require hospitalization or, God forbid, lead to death. And they're going to keep us posted on what those numbers look like. But right now, they're looking like they're quite rare, which is good. It's actually consistent with what the clinical trials told us. So that's really good news.
That is good news. Dr. Vivek Murthy, thank you so much for taking the time out tonight and joining us. Please stay safe and come back anytime. Hi, I'm Zerlina Maxwell. Thanks for checking out our channel on YouTube. You can see more from Zerlina by clicking any of the videos on this screen, and make sure you subscribe below to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. Thanks for watching.